That's enough. The words didn't come out loud at first. They rose from somewhere deep inside a man who had already lost too much. But when they finally did leave his mouth, they echoed across the glittering ballroom like a crack of thunder in a storm of crystal chandeliers and champagne glasses. If you believe in kindness, in second chances, and in the quiet strength of ordinary people, take a moment right now to like this video, share it with someone who needs hope, comment where you're watching from, and subscribe to the channel. Stories like this remind us that courage doesn't wear a crown, sometimes it just wears a worn-out jacket and holds a little girl's trembling hand. The ballroom of the Grand Monarch Hotel was glowing gold that night. Crystal chandeliers shimmered above polished marble floors. CEOs, investors, and city elites moved gracefully between round tables dressed in white silk. Laughter floated in the air, soft and rehearsed. It was the annual charity gala hosted by one of the most powerful women in the state, Elena Whitmore, founder and CEO of Whitmore Global Industries. A self-made billionaire. A woman whose name could open doors or close them forever. Near the back of the hall, slightly out of place among tailored tuxedos and designer gowns, stood Daniel Hayes. Daniel wasn't supposed to be there. His suit was clean but clearly old, the sleeves slightly short at the wrists. His dark hair was combed carefully, though streaks of exhaustion ran through his face. In one hand, he held a folded invitation, one that had taken him 3 weeks to get. In the other, he held the small, shaking hand of his 8-year-old daughter, Lily. Lily's mother had died 2 years ago after a sudden illness. Since then, Daniel had been mother and father, protector and provider. He worked double shifts at a warehouse, skipped meals so Lily wouldn't have to, and stayed up late helping her with homework even when his back felt like it would break. Every choice he made revolved around one thing: keeping his daughter safe. But safety was fragile in the neighborhood they lived in. Daniel had once owned a small construction company. It was modest, but it was his. He built it from nothing. Then came the threats. A group of local thugs demanded protection fees. When Daniel refused, equipment was vandalized. Contracts mysteriously disappeared. Eventually, false accusations shut his company down. Daniel never proved who was behind it, but everyone knew. And tonight, the same men were here. They weren't dressed like thugs anymore. They wore suits now. One of them, Victor Kane, had reinvented himself as a real estate developer. He had donated generously to the gala. Money had cleaned his reputation. Or at least disguised it. Daniel hadn't planned to confront them. He only wanted one thing: to meet Elena Whitmore. Weeks ago, he discovered that Kane's newest development project, funded partially by Whitmore Global, was the same project displacing dozens of low-income families, including Daniel and Lily. Their apartment building was scheduled for demolition. No compensation. No mercy. He had written letters. Emails. Called offices. Nothing. So he came in person. At first, no one noticed him. Then Victor Kane did. Victor's smile was slow and cruel. He walked over with 2 men at his side, their eyes scanning Daniel like predators assessing prey. Lily instinctively tightened her grip on her father's hand. Daniel felt it. The fear. The trembling. Victor leaned in close, his voice low but sharp. He reminded Daniel of unpaid debts, of mistakes, of how easy it would be for a man like him to disappear. He told him to leave before security was called. He glanced at Lily and smirked in a way that made Daniel's stomach twist. That was the moment. Daniel stepped forward, placing himself fully between the men and his daughter. The golden music and clinking glasses faded in his ears. His pulse roared. That's enough. This time it was loud. Conversation stopped. Heads turned. Even the string quartet faltered. Daniel's voice carried something more powerful than anger. It carried desperation. Truth. He spoke not like a businessman, not like a man seeking revenge, but like a father whose back was against the wall. He spoke of the threats, the intimidation, the families being forced onto the streets. He spoke of how easy it was for men in suits to hide cruelty behind contracts. He didn't shout. He didn't curse. He simply told the truth. Across the ballroom, Elena Whitmore turned. She had been mid-conversation when she heard the name. Daniel Hayes. The name hit her like a memory she had tried to bury. 20 years ago, before the billion-dollar company, before the power suits and private jets, Elena had been a scholarship student struggling to stay afloat in college. Her father had died suddenly. Bills piled up. She was days away from dropping out. Back then, there had been a young construction worker renovating part of the campus library. He had found her sitting on the steps one night, crying over a tuition notice. He didn't know her. He didn't owe her anything. But he listened. And the next week, somehow, a quiet donation had appeared in the university fund in her name. Enough to keep her enrolled. The donor had asked for anonymity. His name had been Daniel Hayes. The champagne glass slipped from Elena's hand and shattered against the marble floor. Silence swallowed the room. She walked toward him slowly, her heels echoing with each step. The crowd parted instinctively. Daniel looked up, confused, protective still. Elena stopped in front of him. For a long moment, she said nothing. Her eyes moved from his worn suit to Lily's frightened face. Then she spoke, her voice steady but thick with emotion. She remembered. She remembered the kindness of a stranger who expected nothing in return. She remembered how that single act had changed the course of her life. And now, standing in front of her, that same man was being threatened at her own event. The power dynamic shifted instantly. Security approached, but not for Daniel. Victor Kane's confident expression crumbled as Elena turned her gaze toward him. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. With calm precision, she announced an immediate suspension of all funding connected to Kane's developments pending a full investigation. She requested documentation, transparency, accountability. For the first time in years, Victor looked small. Daniel didn't ask for revenge. He only asked for fairness. For time. For protection for the families who had nowhere else to go. Elena promised more than that. Within weeks, Whitmore Global launched a housing initiative for displaced residents. Daniel was invited to consult, not as a charity case, but as someone who understood the real cost of corporate decisions. His integrity became his qualification. His old construction license was reinstated with legal assistance. He was offered contracts to rebuild communities instead of watching them fall. But the most powerful moment wasn't in the headlines. It was later that night, outside the hotel, under the cool city lights. Lily looked up at her father and asked if they were going to be okay. Daniel knelt down, brushed a strand of hair from her face, and for the first time in months, he answered without fear in his voice. Yes. Because sometimes courage isn't about fighting with fists. Sometimes it's about standing firm when you're afraid. Sometimes it's about saying, "That's enough," when the world expects you to stay silent. And sometimes, the kindness you give quietly returns when you need it most. If this story touched your heart, take a second to comment the word "enough" below. Let's fill the comments with strength and hope. Share this video with someone who needs a reminder that standing up matters. And before you go, please like, comment, and subscribe if you believe that even in rooms filled with power, one brave voice can change everything. Because heroes don't always wear capes. Sometimes, they just hold their daughter's hand and refuse to step back.